Thank you all for coming here. This is our is supposed to be a regularly scheduled monthly charter meeting, which was not held for last 2 months because of TICON. But and our charter meetings, member meetings are typically held on the last Tuesday. This time we made an exception because we are privileged to have an outstanding speaker that you know about, and we'll talk about him later. But so this is our regular chart member event, and we'll talk about a few things before going on to the speech of today. So first thing is, please note down on your calendar that we'll have 2 social events with spouses and significant others this year for charter members. And the dates for those events are, please write it down. Saturday, August 20th, and the second one is going to be on Saturday, November 19th. So we'll send out an email, but please note it down. Saturday, August 20, and Saturday, November 19th. So our goal is to have at least 3 such social events this year. So we'll catch up on that. I'm also very happy to announce that to make these things more fun and more more responsive to the interests of charter member community. Some people have been volunteered to organize this, and the person who is smiling the most,
volunteered. I like that.
Shamik Mehta and his wife. They will be one of the organizers, and other guy who is not here, and he will be told that he is one of the organizers, is Ravinder Paul Singh and his wife. So these 4 people with full support from the Tide staff would be responsible for organizing a fun-filled evening that promotes social interaction. Okay. Also, we have introduced a 3-step review process for inducting new charter members. The 3-step process is that first, all the applications go to a committee of charter members, volunteers, who review it online and quickly give it a rating. And we want at least 10 people to respond, and people are traveling, or they, sometimes it doesn't happen. So we have 10 people, but we've been getting only 6 or 7 kind of responses. So I think we need to expand that committee from 10 to 15, so that at least 10 every time we say reviewing that. So we get the wisdom of the crowd here. And it doesn't take more than 4 or 5 minutes really. To read an application and make a quick judgment, whether it's thumbs up or thumbs down or maybe. So if it's more than out of 10, if there are more than 2 thumbs down, that person does not go to the next level of screening. It's pretty stringent. I think the idea is that that the peer group should feel honored and privileged to have the new inductees as part of that peer group. So if more than 2 people say no, then that person does not go to the next stage. And then after that, there is a committee of 4 people who meets the candidates for breakfast. And those 4 people are Arun Kumar, board member of KPMG. Second one is Vivek Mehra of August Capital. And the third one is Deep Nishar of LinkedIn. He's a lot richer now than he was 2 weeks ago. And me. So 4 of us meet candidates, and then we meet them, we interact with them, and then finally, based on that, I send a recommendation to the board of directors. So it's really a 3-step process. We have only 10 members on this online review thing, so I need volunteers. I need about 5 more volunteers to do that. Satish is one, thank you. Do I have any other volunteers? Perfect. Okay, we got it now. We got it. Thank you very much. So,
Is it the same criteria following the other chapters, or it's only for Silicon Valley?
I have no idea. Yeah.
Every chapter given some background material, but then they tailor it to their own situation. So there is a whole 4 or 5 page document that describes what we are looking for, how we are looking for. The chapters are small, chapters are big. There is no one process that will work for
lest I forget, I don't have anything to write on. Those 5 people who raised their hands, Kiran, are you taking notes? Please raise the hands again, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, you got them all? Until Kiran says, please don't put your hand down. Eventually she'll look at you.
I can't see it. Oh, who is next to Sati, the other?
Jyoti. And Raj Mashruwala.
No.
That's it. I
And
got it.
Prem Kuluru.
It's
and-
not everybody.
Okay. Did you get Praveen?
He's going to do
course.
the social event too with me.
Okay.
He volunteered for-
All right, good. Good, okay, great. All right. So next month's meeting would be, next month's charter member meeting again would be our last Tuesday. And next month's meeting would be on a panel discussion on venture investing in India. Kamil has agreed to be on the panel. And so we'll have 3 or 4 VCs who are active in India who will be on that panel. So please note it down, last Tuesday of next month, venture investing in India. All right, we also have, this thing, we use this opportunity to introduce, to get new charter members to introduce themselves. But before I go on to that, I just want to acknowledge the presence of our first president of TIE. So I don't know if all of you are aware, but Suhas Patil is here today, and he is the first president of TIE. These are the founders of the institution builders. All right, so let me get some of the new charter members to introduce themselves. Let's start with the dynamic Mr. Manish Sagar.
Oh, thank you, sir. So I'll do it from here. Thank you.
So I think I've been a charter member for almost a year because my annual dues are coming up. So I have to figure out where the $1,500 comes from. But in terms of background, I'm originally like all of you guys from India, but a lot of my professional life has been in the tri-state area, New York City, Connecticut, New Jersey, and we started TIE Connecticut. I think in '98 there were about 5 of us. And Connecticut's not really the center of entrepreneurial tech, it's more of the finance center. So a couple of years later we merged it into TIE Tri-State, which covers the whole Tri-State area. My background is entrepreneurial, started a bunch of different companies. The last company we started was a company called Nuvis, and it was a rapid application tools company. We sold it to a division of IBM called Rational. And I went to business school after that, went back to the VC who funded us. It's the private equity arm of the state of Connecticut called Connecticut Innovations. So they have what's called an evergreen fund. So, you pretty much don't raise money like traditional VCs do. You invest out of a pot of money, and whenever you sell a company, you go invest the same money again. So I moved there 2 years ago, and I invest in very early stage companies, put my money in, and friends and family's money, and I'm usually the first investor in the companies. Venk also thought I should maybe do a little pitch here. So the pitch is, I'm also putting a very early stage fund together, 25 million, and if anybody's interested in talking to me about that, I'll be very happy to do that. So it's great being here. I love the group.
What do you like to do? Why did you join TIE?
Oh, the TIE part is, I think it's a phenomenal platform for, doing what entrepreneurs are good at, which is starting companies. And it's also a phenomenal platform, for somebody like me to find new deals, to find mentors, to find people I can help, and, complete the whole ecosystem. So I think it's a phenomenal platform. And the Silicon Valley part is definitely way more dynamic, than the East Coast part. So. My only, wish is we should do a little more of the events up in San Francisco where I used to live. Now I live in Marin, so it's a little, it's a little bit of a hike. So, but thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, the next one is Sanjay Shirole.
Let me step back here so I'm not backing up to any of you guys. My name is Sanjay Shirole, and I've been here in the Silicon Valley for about 21 years now. I'm an entrepreneur. I just finished my second startup, and after about 11, 12 years of building and running a wireless mobile applications company, I thought it was time to start something else. So I brought on a new CEO, and now I'm taking it a little easy. And when I was taking it easy, I thought I need to get involved in the TIE group, which, as Manish said, is a fantastic platform, both from a contribution side as a mentor towards young entrepreneurs, and also upwards to get mentored by some of the senior members here. I was trying to get Suhas to give me a few of those things, so I sat next to Suhas for a little while. What I like to do, I do like to spend a lot of time mentoring people. In fact, I am on the board of advisors of a couple of very, very smart companies in the mobile space, and I would love to help out anyone else. I only take equity, I don't take cash. But once again, it's been a pleasure. Venk and I were peers when Venk was a competitor of mine in the same space that I was in. I just had more staying power than Venk had. Sorry.
Thanks. Welcome, Sanjay. Kirit Kamdar.
Thank you. I moved here about 6 months ago from Chicago. I'm so new to the area and new to the TIE here, but I was one of the 6 early members when we started Chicago chapter in TIE. I was one of the charter members there. So I have 2 daughters who live in the Bay Area. And so basically when we decided to move here after retirement, we thought I reconnected with TIE, and with Venk's help was able to slip into the TIE charter member elite community. He talked about the 3-step process, and when I submitted my resume, it's extremely simple because I started a small manufacturing company in 1974, and I sold it in 2009. So unlike all of you geniuses with 12 companies and all that, my resume was about 1 paragraph. And so I got a lot of nudges from Venk and other people. Well, can you give us some more details about your background before, we have to submit this to the board of directors and this and that. I said, look, this is what it is. I can't embellish it anymore. It's very simple. I kept my company much longer than most marriages last, so what are you complaining about? And also I enjoy, I have a different background than most of the TIE member in the sense it's mechanical engineering and manufacturing technology type of background as opposed to computer science and software industries. So it's interesting. I think one of the things I enjoyed most about TIE, particularly in Chicago, was again the networking and meeting some very successful, bright, interesting people. And here this is the same reason. That's why I drive 1 hour each way to come to a TIE meeting here. We live in Black Hawk, so it's a long drive to come here, but it's worth it. I enjoy it, and thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, and so last new charter member is Ken Bhugra.
Thank you. My name is Kern Bugra. My background, I grew up in Michigan. I went to school at University of Michigan and came out here to California, gosh, about 20 years ago. Went to school at Stanford and got into bioengineering, but I've been involved with TIE in some manner for the last, I think I met Suhas maybe 15 years ago. And so I've had some peripheral relationship with TIE. I originally went to IBM for a number of years. I did bioengineering at Stanford, went into IBM, did medical imaging, and then did quite a bit of international management. Came back and started a medical device company in neurological rehabilitation. Raised a lot of venture money around it, ran it for 8 years, did very well. And now I've just started a couple more companies, so both in the medical device space. So it's great to be here. I think there's a lot of, one of the beauties of TIE is the relationships, and there's a lot of great relationships here, so happy to be here.
All right, so let's move on to the main event today. Before I do that, let me ask by show of hands, how many people have done the homework assignment? Okay, all right, that's not...
Sit outside.
You guys go outside.
Or we are still on the fun side.
All right. So, before, so our speaker today is Justice of the Supreme Court of India, which is, very, very distinguished position in India. It's the justice system in India and Supreme Court really is in two very fundamental way different from the US system. One is that the justices of the Supreme Court are not political appointees. It's not, they're not appointed to see by a party or this thing. It's once you become a high court, once you become a justice of the high court, then beyond that, it's the collegium of the Supreme Court justices that picks the next justice to become member of the Supreme Court. And once you are a member of the Supreme Court, then it's purely by seniority, one who becomes Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. There have been some ridiculous situations where someone has been a Chief Justice for 2-3 months because it's strictly by seniority. So that's one difference. The second difference is that unlike US, here you see the whole debate is about interpreting the law. And Indian Supreme Court interprets the law, but it goes far beyond that. There is a judicial innovation in India called public interest litigation. So if you are very unhappy with pollution in Delhi, you go to Supreme Court. If if sex workers are not getting the whatever this thing from the government, they go to the Supreme Court. So this is this would be what would be called blatant activism in the United States is fairly accepted in India. In fact, Supreme Court is egged on by vast majority of Indians to be activists. So with under the last Chief Justice, it was not so activist, and people were missing Supreme Court in action. And under the new Chief Justice, it has become assertive again. So, and to the wide applause of a huge number of majority of Indians, I should say. So those are the two fundamental different.
The third one.
Yes.
It's not for all life.
It's not for all life. That's right. The Justice of the Supreme Court is in India retired at the age of 65. So that's another fundamental difference. So given how by U.S. standard how activist the Supreme Court in India is, a Speaker of the Day is considered among those more activists than most others, and this is my interpretation. It may not be accurate one. Wikipedia, if you read a Wikipedia article on him, it says that his judgments are bold, insightful, and often controversial. So hopefully, we'll get some of those insight into some of those adjectives as he speaks to them. Some of his very interesting judgments have been about the right of women in extramarital relationships. That have been a very, very significant verdict. The other verdict has been the rights of sex workers and retraining of sex workers. Another one of his very interesting one was when he pronounced, when he derided the corruption in Allahabad High Court. Apparently, a lot of High Court justices there have their sons and relatives practicing as advocates in the same court, and who have become very rich very, very quickly. And in some cases, our speaker today, within the judgment, mentioned that something is rotten in Allahabad. And Allahabad High Court was very, very incensed, and they made a formal petition to withdraw those words, and Supreme Court refused. So given those kind of high standards, I think there is a personal consequence of that. Our speaker comes from a distinguished family of lawyers. His grandfather was Law Minister of India. His father was Justice of the Allahabad High Court. His uncle was Chief Justice of Allahabad High Court, and he himself is. So it's a 3 generation. But because of his conviction that the lawyers are, the judges are taking undue advantage by having their relatives as advocates, he didn't allow his kids to become lawyers. So that glorious tradition of legal profession has been broken, and probably so again, his lovely daughter Vandana. Vandana is here as Vice President of HSBC because he won't allow her to become a lawyer.
That's true.
Is that true? Okay, all right. But the best part of the speaker today is that he happens to come from a state that is the best state in India, the heart of India, the microcosm of India, that is the state of Madhya Pradesh.
You know what?
Yes. That's the best part. Madhya Pradesh, yeah, Madhya Pradesh. And his grandfather, the same person who happened to be Law Minister of India, also was Chief Minister of the state of Madhya Pradesh. So with that, I'm honored and privileged to invite Justice Karju to talk to us. So after he'll speak for some time, and then we'll have a question and answer session.
Friends, I'm deeply honored to be invited here to speak before all of you. Since my time is limited, I was told I should speak for 30 minutes, and after that there will be question and answer. You can keep on asking me questions as long as you want to, but my main speech, I was told I should restrict myself to 30 minutes, so I may come to the topic under discussion immediately. That is, what is India? I am placing before you 5 theses for your consideration. 1, India is broadly a country of immigrants, like North America. 92% people living in India are not the original inhabitants. Their ancestors came from outside, mainly from the northwest. 2, because India is a country of immigrants, like North America, there's tremendous diversity in India. 3, despite the tremendous diversity in India, by the interaction and intermingling of these immigrants who came into India, a common culture emerged in India which can broadly be called the Sanskrit-Urdu culture. That is the culture of India. 4, because of the tremendous diversity in India, the only policy which can work is secularism and giving equal respect to all communities. Otherwise, our country cannot survive for one day. It will be broken up into 100 pieces. 5, India is passing through a transitional period. Transition from feudal agricultural economy to modern industrial economy. And this is a very painful and agonizing period in history. If you've read the history of Europe from 16th to 19th century, you will find this was a horrible period in Europe. Only after going through that fire in which there were wars and revolutions and turmoil, intellectual ferment, chaos, social churning, after going through that fire, modern society emerged in Europe. India is presently going through that fire. We are going through that very painful and agonizing period, which I think will last for at least another 20 years. 5 theses I put before you. Now, may I briefly elaborate? 1, that India is broadly a country of immigrants, like North America. North America is a country of new immigrants, where people came mainly from Europe over the last 400-500 years. In India, people have been coming in for 10,000 years or so. Why have people been coming into India? Very few people left India, except on 2 occasions, namely one in the 19th century during British rule. The indentured labor was sent to Fiji and Mauritius and West Indies, etc. in the plantations, the poor peasants. And to the diaspora over the last 30-40 years. Otherwise, nobody left. Everybody came into India. Nobody left India. The reason is obvious. People migrate from uncomfortable areas to comfortable areas. Obviously, because everybody wants comfort. Now, before the Industrial Revolution, which started in the Western Europe from the 18th century and then spread all over the world, there were agricultural societies everywhere. Now, what does agriculture require? It requires level land, it requires fertile soil, it requires plenty of water for irrigation. This was in abundance in the Indian subcontinent. If you go from Rawalpindi to Bangladesh, to deep south Kanyakumari, all level land, fertile soil, plenty of rivers, You scatter some seeds and there's a bumper harvest. Why will anybody migrate from India to say Afghanistan, which is cold and rocky, and if you have seen on your television screens like a desert covered with snow for 4 or 5 months in a year. You know, I've never seen snow falling in my life. I don't know what it looks like. It's all comfort. It was paradise. So everybody kept rolling into India, mainly from the northwest and to a much lesser extent from the northeast. Who were the original inhabitants of India? At one time it was believed that the Dravidians were the original inhabitants, but now that theory has been disproved. It is believed even the Dravidians came from outside. There are several proofs of that, one of which is that there is a Dravidian language called Brahui, B-R-A-H-U-I, which is spoken in western Pakistan even today. 3 million people speak Brahui, which is similar to Tamil. It shows that that's a remnant which was left back. So the original inhabitants of India, as it is believed now, were the pre-Dravidian tribals who are called Adivasis or scheduled tribes in India, who are driven into the forests, the Bhils and the Adivasis and Gonds, the Munda speaking, the Austric languages, pre-Dravidian languages. They are hardly 7-8% of the Indian population. They were pushed into forests and they were treated very badly. Otherwise, all of us are descendants of immigrants who came mainly from the northwest. Second thesis, that because it is a country of immigrants, there is tremendous diversity in India. So many religions, so many castes, so many languages, so many ethnic groups. Somebody is tall, somebody is short, somebody is fair, somebody is dark, somebody is brown and all kinds of shades in between. Somebody has got Mongoloid features, somebody has got Caucasian features, somebody has got Negroid features. If you compare India with China, see, our population is 1200 million. China is 1300 million, and they have perhaps 2.5 times our land area. But there's broad homogeneity in China. Not absolute homogeneity, but broad homogeneity. All Chinese have a Mongoloid face. They have one common written script called the Mandarin Chinese, although spoken dialects are different. Then 95% Chinese belong to one ethnic group called the Han Chinese. So there's broad homogeneity in China. In India, there's tremendous diversity, because as I said, whichever group of immigrants came into India brought in their own culture, their religion, their language, and so on. Third thesis is that is India a nation at all, or is it just a group of hundreds of immigrants? Is there anything common in India? The answer is that these immigrants who came into India over the last 10,000 years or so, by the interaction and intermingling, a common culture emerged which can broadly be called the Sanskrit-Urdu culture. This is our culture. Now this has to be explained, because some people ask me when I put forward this thesis, that how do you say this is the culture of India? How are Tamilians part of Sanskrit-Urdu culture? What have people from Nagaland got to do with Sanskrit or Urdu? Answer is that you must first understand what is Sanskrit and what is Urdu. I'll just take a little time to explain this, because it's important. Both of these languages have been misunderstood. People think that Sanskrit is a language of chanting mantras in temples and in religious ceremonies. That's only 5% of Sanskrit. 95% of Sanskrit has nothing to do with religion. It deals with a whole range of subjects like philosophy, law, science, including mathematics, medicine, astronomy, grammar, phonetics, literature, of course. So you can't compare Bengali and Tamil with Bengali and Tamil have only stories, novels, literature, but they don't have any discussion on mathematics or on medicine. Sanskrit was the language of people with an inquiring mind who inquired about everything, and therefore there's a whole range of subjects which have been discussed in Sanskrit. In the paper which you may have read on the website kgfindia.com, I discussed all this, so I need not go into great detail. I may just mention two things. One is the contribution of Panini, and the other is the contribution of the Nyaya Vaisheshik philosophy. You see, Sanskrit is not just one language. There are many Sanskrits. What you call Sanskrit today, and what is taught in schools and colleges, is really Panini Sanskrit, which is called classical Sanskrit or Lokik Sanskrit. But there were much earlier Sanskrit. The earliest Sanskrit book is the Rig Veda, which was written anytime between 2000 or 1500 BC. You see, language changes with passage of time. For instance, if you pick up a play of Shakespeare, you will not be able to understand it without a good commentary, because the English language has changed over these 4.5 centuries. Many of the words and expressions which were in vogue in Shakespeare's time in English are not in vogue today. Similarly, Sanskrit language kept changing for 1500, from 2000 BC to 5th century BC, it kept changing until Panini, who was perhaps the greatest grammarian the world has ever seen, he in his book called Ashtadhyayi fixed the rules of Sanskrit in 5th century BC. And thereafter no further changes in Sanskrit were permitted, except slight changes were made by two other grammarians. One was a man called Katyayan, who wrote his book Vartika about 100 or 200 years after Panini, and another was Patanjali, who wrote his Mahabhash about 200 years after Katyayan. Except for these slight changes, what is taught in schools and colleges is really Panini's Sanskrit. Now, what Panini did was that he studied the crude Sanskrit prevailing in his time, and he rationalized it, he systematized it, so as to make it a powerful vehicle of expressing profound ideas or abstract ideas. You see, science requires precision. Panini made Sanskrit as a powerful vehicle in which scientific ideas could be expressed with great precision, with great clarity, and it was systematized all over India. That was a great contribution. I may just give you one small illustration, because a lecture on Ashtadhyayi will take too much time. Take, for example, the alphabets in the English language, from A to Z. Now, they have all been arranged in a haphazard manner. Why is B followed by C? Why is D followed by E? There's no reason. Why does F come after E? Why is P followed by Q or Q followed by R? There's no reason. All jumbled up haphazard. In Sanskrit, what Panini did was he arranged it in a very, very scientific manner. For example, take the consonants. Now there's the ka word, ka, kha, ga, gha, nga, which you must have read. Now all these sounds coming from the throat, ka, kha, ga, gha, nga, a sequence of 5 consonants. And the second and the fourth one are what are known as aspirants. An aspirant means a consonant in which ha is added. For instance, ka plus ha is kha, ga plus ha is gha. So the second and the fourth consonant in the sequence, in the word, will be an aspirant. So ka, kha, ga, ga, nga, all coming from the throat. Cha, cha, ja, ja, ya, all coming from the middle of the tongue. Ta, tha, da, dha, da, coming from the roof of the mouth. Ta, tha, da, dha, na, coming from the tip of the tongue. Pa, pha, ba, bha, ma, coming from the lips. See how scientifically it was arranged. Even the alphabet, such a simple thing, all arranged very scientifically. This was a great contribution of Panini. He made Sanskrit a powerful vehicle of expressing profound ideas in very concise manner, which is required in science. Second contribution in Sanskrit was the contribution of the Nyaya Vaisheshik philosophy. I don't know how many of you are students of Indian philosophy, but I'll tell you very briefly that there are 6 classical systems: Nyaya, Vaisheshik, Sankhya, Yoga, Purvamimamsa and Uttarmimamsa, and 3 non-classical, that is Buddhism, Jainism, Charvaka. Out of these 9 systems, 8 of them are atheistic. There's no place for God in them, except for the 9th one, that is Uttarmimamsa, which is also called Vedanta. And people only know about Vedanta. But one of the systems is called the Nyaya system of philosophy. And the Nyaya system of philosophy says that nothing is acceptable unless it is in accordance with reason and experience, which is precisely the scientific approach. And the Nyaya and Vaisheshik was the physics of ancient times, the atomic theory. Physics is part of science, so at one time Vaisheshik was part of Nyaya philosophy, but because physics is the most fundamental of all sciences, subsequently Vaisheshik was separated from Nyaya and made into a different philosophy altogether. So it was the Nyaya Vaisheshik philosophy which provided the scientific background, which gave great encouragement to the scientists to propound their scientific theories. And people in our country were not persecuted for being scientists, unlike in Europe, where people were burnt on the stake. Bruno was burnt on the stake for propounding his scientific theory. Galileo was almost burnt on the stake. He narrowly escaped by recanting his views. Otherwise, he would have been burnt on the stake. In 1925, in America, a teacher, John Scopes, in 1925, was criminally prosecuted for teaching Darwin's theory of evolution because it was against the Bible. This never happened in our country because behind science was a scientific philosophy, that is the Nyaya Vaisheshik philosophy, which said that nothing is acceptable unless it is in accordance with reason and experience. Now, I was just telling you about what were the achievements in our country. You know, a lot of people talk nonsense that in India, ancient India, there was atom bomb and we had invented atom bomb and we had... it is all nonsense. You make a laughing stock of yourself. People say that, oh see, in Ramayana it is mentioned that we had Pushpak Viman. Lord Ram brought Sita back from Lanka on Pushpak Viman. See, what is Ramayana? Ramayana is an epic poem. A poet is granted what is known as poetic license, which means that he has the right to exaggerate. So don't take it literally. If there was an aeroplane in ancient times, then that means there were engines, then why did you fight on Rath? You should have fought with tanks. It is all nonsense. See, you make a laughing stock of yourself by talking like this. And the real great achievements of our ancestors you are totally unaware of. At one time we were leading the whole world in science and technology. I will give you a few illustrations. See, the ancient Romans, who built a very great civilization of Caesar and Augustus, and they were the cultural ancestors of the whole of Europe, they felt very uncomfortable with numbers above 1000. Because, see, they expressed their numbers in alphabets. 1 was I, 5 was V, 10 was X, 50 was L, 100 was C, 500 D, 1000 was M, which stands for millennium. They had nothing above M. So if they wanted to write 2000, they had to write MM. 3000, MMM. And 1 million, they would have to write M 1000 times. That was the only way they could express 1 million. Whereas we had invented the concept of zero. You see, these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, they don't really exist. What exists is 1 table, 2 chairs, 3 men. These have existence in the objective universe. 1, 2, 3, 4 has no, is a pure abstraction. And then concept of zero, it required a further flight of imagination. 0 man, 0 table. Europeans could never achieve it. They borrowed, the Arabs borrowed it from us and the Europeans borrowed it from the Arabs. So we could express numbers in very astronomical terms. For example, you have 1000, 1 plus 3 zeros, add 2 more zeros, it becomes 1 lakh, add 2 more zeros, it becomes 1 crore, 2 more zeros, 1 arab, 2 more zeros, 1 kharab, 2 more zeros, 1 padm, 2 more zeros, 1 nil, 2 more zeros, 1 shank, 2 more zeros, 1 mahashank. Each one of them having names and going on and on and on. Whereas the Romans felt very uncomfortable after 1000 because they didn't know how to express it. So at one time it was said that these were Arabic numerals. The Europeans called them Arabic numerals, but the Arabs called it Hindu numerals. So the question is whether they were Arabs or Hindu. The proof is that you see these languages, Arabic, Persian, Urdu, they are written from right to left. But you ask any of the writers of this language, any of these languages, to write any number, take at random, say 253 or 1045, he will write it from left to right. What does it indicate? You try that experiment. His own language he writes from right to left, but the number in his language he writes from left to right. It means that these numbers were taken from a language which was written from left to right, and now it is accepted they were invented by Indians. So we could conceive of very high numbers, unlike the Romans. For example, it is believed that this is the Kali Yuga in which we are living. This was the belief, and it was believed that Kali Yuga is 4,32,000 years, according to Agni Puran, 4,32,000 years. The Yuga before Kali Yuga is called Dwapar Yuga, in which Lord Krishna is said to have lived. That is twice as long as Kali Yuga. Therefore, 8,64,000 years. Before that, Treta Yuga, in which Lord Ram lived, it is thrice as long as Kali Yuga. And before that, Satyuga is 4 times as long as Kali Yuga. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 is 10. So 1 Kali Yuga plus 1 Dwapar Yuga plus 1 Treta Yuga plus 1 Satyuga. This is known as 1 Chaturyugi. And 1 Chaturyugi is 10 times as long as 1 Kali Yuga. That means 1 Chaturyugi is 43,20,000 years long. 56 Chaturyugis make 1 Manvantar. 14 Manvantars make 1 Kalp. And 12 Kalps make 1 day of Brahma. And Brahma is said to have lived for trillions of years and so on. Now, and when people do their sankalp every day, the traditional people, they have to mention this day, every day date changes of this kalp, of this manvant. For instance, we are living in the Vaivaswat Manvantar. The present Manvantar is called Vaivaswat Manvantar. And it is believed that out of the 56 Chaturyugis in the Manvantar, 28 have passed, and we are in the 29th Chaturyugi of the Vaivaswat Manvantar. You may not believe all this, but look at the flight of imagination of our ancestors, how high they could go. Similarly, in various fields, in medicine, Sushruta invented plastic surgery 2000 years ago. You see, in plastic, you don't use plastic surgery, you don't use plastic. You take one part of the body and put it in another part. Like in this bypass heart operation, you take a vein from the man's body and put it in his heart, because then the immune system will not reject. So this was invented 2000 years ago by Sushruta. Westerners invented it only 200 years back. So and if you go to London Science Museum, you will find the one whole gallery where the Sushruta had about 40-50 surgical instruments. We were far ahead in medicine. In astronomy, the calculations which were made 2000 years ago, on the basis of that, even today, it can be predicted that on this day, at this time, there will be Surya Grahan, solar eclipse, or Chandra Grahan, on this day, from this minute to this minute. It is that reading that patra, you can tell. Calculation made 2000 years ago by people who did not have telescopes and modern instruments. Sheer observation by the naked eye and power of intellect, they can predict what is going to happen 2000 years in the future. This shows the level which we had reached, and we were far in advance of the West in science and technology. Today we are far behind them. So what happened? Why did we not have an industrial revolution? Why did we lag behind? This is known as Needham's question. If you go online, Joseph Needham has posed this question. He was a brilliant professor of microbiology in Cambridge University, born in 1900, and he became a professor in 1925. He has posed this question: what happened? Why did India and China, which were ahead of the whole world in science and technology, lag behind? They did not have an industrial revolution. And this has been sought to be answered in various ways. I've also sought to be, but that we will discussion we will have on some other day. So I was telling you, Sanskrit was a language of the inquiring mind, which inquired into every aspect of life, and therefore it is the language not only of Hindus or of North India. It is the language of anybody who has a rational approach, because the emphasis in Sanskrit is on reason. There's the emotion also in it, but the emphasis is on reason, and everybody has reason. Coming to Urdu, this is also, in a way, the greatest language so far as poetry is concerned. I have read the poetry of many countries, French poetry, German. There is no match to Urdu poetry. Because the voice of the heart which is expressed in Urdu poetry is not expressed by any other language in the world. Again, about Urdu, there is a misconception that it is the language of Muslims, it is the language of foreigners, which is a totally false propaganda made against Urdu after 1947, after the partition. Before 1957, all educated people in large parts of India were studying Urdu. That was our language. It was not a language of Muslims alone. It was a language of Hindus, Christians, Muslims, Sikhs, everybody. In Punjab, the Sikhs used to write in the Urdu script. It was only after 1947 that they switched over to Gurmukhi script. Before 1947, all they were writing in Urdu script. Even now they know it. They're very good. Punjabis are very good in Urdu. So this was the language of all of us. But after partition, a deliberate propaganda was made that Hindi is the language of Hindus and Urdu is the language of Muslims. So make Hindus and Muslims fight with each other. A beautiful game was started. Urdu, lot of effort was made to crush Urdu in India, but something which comes from the voice of the heart, in my opinion, can never be crushed as long as people have hearts. Urdu belongs to India. If you go to a railway station in India, go to the platform and go to the bookstall, you will find a lot of books of Mir and Ghalib and Firaq and Fair, of course now in Devanagari script. And people buy that. You won't have any book of Mahadevi Verma or Sumitra Nand Pant. Hindi poets nobody reads. Everybody reads Urdu books. So which is the language of the common man in India? Urdu has a dual nature. You see, Urdu is a combination of two languages. Hindustani and Persian. That is why it was at one time called Rekhta. Rekhta means hybrid, means mili-juli. Now, since it is a combination of two languages, Hindustani and Persian, the question arises, is it a special kind of Persian or is it a special kind of Hindustani? The answer is that it is a special kind of Hindustani, not a special kind of Persian. Why? Because the verbs in Urdu are all in Hindustani. You see, the language to which a sentence belongs is determined by the verb used in it. Supposing I say, Mr. Venk, you and your wife, aaiye to my house tomorrow night for dinner at 12 p.m., at 8 p.m. Now this sentence has 15 words of it, 14 are in English, but it is a Hindustani sentence, not an English, because the verb aaiye is in Hindustani. In Urdu, all the verbs are in simple Hindi, which is called Hindustani or Khadi Boli. For example, Ghalib says, Dekho mujhe jo deeda hai ibrat nigaho, meri suno jo gosh hai, nasiyat neosh hai. Dekho, suno, hai, simple Hindustani. The nouns and adjectives may be from Persian or Arabic verbs. So it is the verb which determines the nature of the sentence. And the verbs in Urdu are all in simple Hindi. It has to be, otherwise it is not Urdu. And this shows that it is an indigenous language, unlike Arabic and Persian, which are foreign languages. But Urdu is a local language. And Urdu has a dual nature, because it is a combination of Hindustani and Persian. Hindustani is the language of the common man. Where did Persian come from? Persian is the language of Persia. See, what happens is that very often that the elite of a country speaks a foreign language. For instance, in India and Pakistan, the elite speak English. In Europe, up to the 19th century, the Russian aristocrats, they would talk to each other in French. But the Russian aristocrat would talk to his servant in Russian. The German aristocrat would talk to another German aristocrat in French, but he would talk to his servant in German. It was the language of French was the language of the elite, because the elite wants to distinguish itself from the common man. Similarly, Persian, although it started from Persia, but it spread to much of South Asia, because the great writers like Hafiz and Firdausi and Sadi, Rumi, they built Persian as a language of sophistication, culture, etiquette, dignity, and that was adopted by large parts of South Asia, including India. It was the court language for several hundred years. Akbar's foreign minister Todar Mal passed an order that all court records will be maintained in Persian. So, Urdu is a combination of Hindustani and Persian. And that is why it has a dual nature. It is a common man's language, Awam ki Zuban, and also not the common, it is the aristocrat language, because one part of it is Persian. So, the content of Urdu is that of the common man. The feelings, the emotions are of the common man. But the form, the style of andaz-e-bayan, it is that of an aristocrat. And that is what gives Urdu great power. I often used to go to functions where these Hindi people used to have meetings, and I would tell them that your Hindi does not have the power of dam which Urdu has. And they would get very angry, but I said, this is the truth. Urdu has a power which Hindi has. Now, Urdu places more reliance on emotion, Sanskrit more on reason. And you require both for the country's progress. Just like in Europe, there were two very great thinkers, Voltaire and Rousseau. Voltaire emphasized reason, Rousseau emphasized emotion, and they played a major role in the creation of modern Europe. So Sanskrit and Urdu, they complement each other, and in fact Sanskrit is the grandmother of Urdu because 70% words in Urdu are from Sanskrit. Now, fourth thesis, that since there is so much diversity in India, only policy which will work is the policy of secularism and giving equal respect to everybody. Otherwise, India will break up into 100 pieces. There's so much diversity. Two people they can said to be the creators of India. One is Emperor Akbar, the other is Jawaharlal Nehru. See, there's no ruler in the world like Emperor Akbar. I've studied the history of the whole world. Nobody, in the 16th century, he proclaimed the doctrine of Sulh-e-Kul, which means universal toleration of all religions. All religions will be treated equally and respected. At a time when Europeans were massacring each other in the name of religion, Catholics massacring Protestants and Protestants massacring Catholics and both massacring the Jews, horrible massacres were